Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hey, everybody. Kutless's Nate Parrish was telling me about his solo work at the recent Loud and Proud Festival in Germany. So we made arrangements to get together when we got back home so we can let you guys hear about it and about his journey to Kutless. I hope you enjoy it. So before we get into Kutless and before we get into the Nate Parrish project, let's talk a little bit about your background, finding out when you started playing the guitar and also your band Worth Dying For and anything else that we need to know.
Sure. So I didn't actually get a guitar until my 18th birthday. So I started later than most, I would say. And so I got a guitar, and my parents thankfully had really good taste in music. I grew up on a lot of Neil Young and like the Cars and different kind of, I don't know if that's new wave, but that kind of 80s stuff. Bob Dylan and things like that. So I had some, fairly decent musical taste, but I really gravitated towards punk rock, especially at that time. That was like the wave of Green Day and Rancid and all those bands coming out. And I had an older sister that really liked that music too. So that's kind of where I started. There's a guy at my school who played guitar, and I asked him, hey, will you show me this Green Day song? And he said, no, I'm not going to teach you that crap. He wanted me to learn Led Zeppelin and stuff. I was like, oh, can I just start with Green Day? And so he reluctantly taught me some chords, and I just took it from there. And then just played nonstop in my room, get home from school, before school, all day, every day, play guitar. And then I got into a band a couple months later, doing a punk rock thing, and started writing songs. So, I don't know. God directs you. You look back on your life, you're like, it's not something I ever would have, like, on purpose chose necessarily, but somehow I ended up there where I was at a youth group doing worship music. And I didn't really grow up on worship music. My experience with worship music was, that's, old people music, or that's church music. So it was something that interested me, but applied my punk rock background to worship. I thought that's what you do. So we started writing songs in that youth group, and there was like screaming and stuff like that, and had a lot of the influences in the bands that we listened to, and that became Worth Dying For. So it started as like a youth group thing. Somehow I found myself in a youth group band writing music, and then it escalated from there. Yeah, it escalated from there. We wanted to write our own music because, we were like kind of this group of ragtag kids, and we wanted to write our own music that reflected our musical tastes, but have it be worship, and something for our people to identify with. Some, labels started knocking on our door, and they liked it for whatever reason, and we got signed to Integrity Records and started touring and doing all that stuff, and put out a couple albums with those guys. It was a lot of fun. When did you join Kutless? So when I was with Worth Dying For, we did our first like major bus tour was with Kutless, 1,000-Foot Crutch, Pillar. It was called Creation Tour. I don't know if you remember that. I clicked with the Kutless guys, primarily James. When I first met him, he was wearing like this metal shirt. I'm like, I'd never would have thought of Kutless as guys who liked metal, but as I kind of, would see them night after night and like hanging out with them, like, oh, these guys are cool. I clicked with James and kept in touch with him over the years. And then around 2015, he sent me a text and he's like, can I call you? And that was kind of out of the ordinary. We usually just send memes to each other, but primary way to communicate these days. Yeah, exactly. He said, do you want to play guitar in Kutless? I immediately said, yes, of course, without even really thinking about, what does this actually mean? So I said, yeah, and learned these 20 songs, and I learned them. And funny thing is, I didn't really know exactly which parts I was doing, so I learned what I assumed I was doing. And then when we went over Skype, he's like, all right, now show me the lead stuff. And I was like, oh, I didn't really learn that. He's like, oh, you're going to play lead. Give me 5 minutes. And so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it was weird. It was literally out of the blue. Called me and said, do you want to play guitar? And I said, yeah. And then that was it. Quit my job, and we were touring right after that. So I feel like people might have been taking notes up until then. It basically just fell in your lap. I know, yeah. My philosophy has always been just let God open the doors, and you just step through them. So I didn't do anything. Nothing
I tend
special.
to stumble through them myself.
I just learned to say yes to things, If I felt like that was a door God was opening, then I said yes, and then I worry about the details after that.
Was the Loud and Proud Festival you just did in Germany, was that the first time y'all been out of the country since the pandemic?
Yes, actually. So we started playing shows again 2021. We did a couple. I remember we played in Texas and we did some other stuff. And then we did a show like in July or something in 2022. So, yeah, that's the first time I had been out of the country in general since the shutdown. I actually almost wasn't able to go because I procrastinated on my passport because you don't really think about it, It expired in 2019. I did the expedited process, but I had missed a step, and they don't start the process until you complete that step.
Oh no.
So when I checked in, I did the 5-week thing, expedited. They're like, oh yeah, the 5 weeks doesn't start until you finish this. And that was 2 weeks from the festival. So I ended up having to go go down to the passport office and jump through all those hoops, but made it fine. So, yeah, it was cool. It was cool traveling out of the country again. I'm not huge on flying. I think if you're over 6 foot tall, it's just not for you. It's a little snug. But it was great, man. I had a really good time, and all the bands were awesome. And yeah,
it was amazing. Any story from Loud and Proud that you'd like to share?
Yeah. When we get done, I like to run out and throw my picks out, and because there's usually kids up in the front. And so there's a couple of kids that I gave some stuff to, and a guy runs up and he's like really excited. Like, hey. I was like, hey, what's up, dude? He's like, okay, I don't want to be this guy, but can we all take a picture? He's like, I flew 22 hours from Australia. My first time seeing you guys, and I've been listening, to Kutless for 18 years. And I was like, yeah, dude, I think we can make an exception. So introduced him to James, and then James pulled him backstage. And we talked to him for a while. The guys talked to him a lot, James and John Micah. But basically, he was just telling us about how when he became a police officer all those years ago, the first couple of years were really, really hard on him, as you can imagine. And he would listen to specifically Kutless, I guess, on the drives there to basically prepare him and kind of calm him and connect him with God, and because he knew he was going to face some tough things. So he was saying Kutless really, in a sense, the music really, it really helped him get through that. And so his wife, he's just like, well, now's the time. So she's like, go. So he flew by himself 22 hours to see Kutless, and it was pretty amazing. So yeah, we get stories like that, and it's cool, because sometimes you don't, especially when you've been doing it for so long. More specifically for James and John Micah, it's easy to lose track of why you're doing it or if it matters, things like that. And so every now and then you get those stories. You're like, all right, cool, it matters. Yeah.
Confirmation of what you felt called to do.
Plus he was Australian, so it was just cool to hear him talk.
Well, being on the booking team and knowing a little bit about what was going on in the background, we sold tickets to people in 23 different countries, I believe.
Oh, really?
And I remember them saying there was tickets sold in Australia and that someone was coming from Australia to see you guys. So I was like, you found them, or they found you.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's a good reminder, and it's a good traveling, and it's hard on you, but don't forget why you're doing it, and be intentional about making opportunities to connect with people.
I did an interview with James, and he talked a little bit about y'all's ministry as a band outside of the country, primarily in the Ukraine. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, so we have a big heart for Ukraine, and so we did a couple tours. The last one was 2016. We were over there for about a month, Ukraine and some surrounding places, but mostly Ukraine. And they told me, when you get back to America, you're going to have a little bit of a depression. I was like, what? I'll be stoked to be home. Yeah, but it's hard to wrap your mind around that. These people in Ukraine, when we're going over there, this is the first time they're hearing the gospel. For us, that's such a crazy thing. So well, don't they have Bibles or it wasn't a thing to have freedom of religion. So when you realize, and I'm watching, and we're doing our rock set, and then John Micah does the gospel in the middle, and you see their faces, hearing it actually for the first time, it's kind of mind blowing that this day and age, that's the mission, and pretty humbling. And it's true. Get back to America, and sometimes, we take stuff for granted, and I'm like, you guys don't get it. I always encourage people, you got to find a way to get out of the country. Because in America, we're bored. And so we complain about stupid stuff that doesn't really matter because we don't really know what it's like to have someone tell you, nope, you're not allowed to do this, and I'm going to control what you believe. It's a perspective shift that I'm thankful for, being able to witness
paradigm shift.
It's a paradigm shift, and it was really cool. So James does a lot of work still with Eastern European missions. So obviously we haven't been able to go back. I still get messages from, well, they were kids then, but they're kind of grown up now in Ukraine. I got a kid messaging me about how he had to flee his home and things like that, and still connect with a lot of the people we met in Ukraine. Yeah.
Backstage with Mothership returns after this.
Miller Express LLC is a Solid Rock Radio business ministry partner specializing in delivery, setup, and relocation of storage buildings. More info by calling 803-300-7594.
Check us out on Facebook at I'm with Mothership.
I know you also do ministry when you're not shredding on a guitar for Kutless. Tell us what you do.
When I'm not shredding on the guitar, I'm shredding on the guitar. So me and my wife lead worship most Sundays. Actually, this last Sunday was the first one we both had off in probably a couple of years. We lead worship together, and I serve as the creative director at my church. So I'm, graphics and videos and all that kind of stuff. So get to be creative and preach every now and then. The joke was that I preach on the holidays when everyone's gone. So I'd preach on New Year's or 4th of July. People call me Pastor Nate, but well,
I was going to say the people that come on Christmas and Easter, they think I'm the
guy. Yeah. You're like, oh no, I'm just the worship guy. But I've been doing ministry somehow. Like I said before, it's not something I predicted or wanted, but here I am. I've been in ministry for a long time. I always find myself in ministry in some capacity. So the
Kutless new music. Are you excited about the direction that James is steering it back towards the heavy?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm very excited about that. It's no secret. I'm a rocker. Okay, so the more headbanging, the better. I got to use this hair for something. So
your luxurious mane.
How
long have you been growing your hair?
I don't know, dude. I need a haircut. I have my first haircut in over a year next week.
Just cutting off the dead ends, right?
Yeah. The
new song, Words of Fire. You played it live at Loud and Proud.
Playing the new song, which was very risky, by the way. People don't realize that. We're like, hey, we're going to learn this song and play it. I'm like, okay. And so that was literally the first time we ever played it.
On the shuttle bus from Frankfurt, John Micah said he wasn't sure if y'all were ready to play it or not. I told him we'd give him extra rehearsal time to make sure we got to hear it live.
Yes, thank you. We were sound checking and realizing, how long have we been up here? We were very thankful for that. The song came out. When did it come out? The Friday?
It came out. The Friday. The Friday before you played it.
It worked out. No, so I'm stoked on it. I'm excited to rock, and even incorporating Run into our set as well from the 20. That was also the first time we played that one. So we have to keep ourselves on our toes,
Yeah. I've loved the worship music, but I am glad to see you going back to your heavy roots.
I am with you on that one.
So Kutless wasn't enough. You had all this creativity oozing up inside of you, and it came out as the Nate Parrish Project.
Yeah.
Tell us how that happened.
So in 2019, I'm a comic book fan. If you could see behind me, there's toys and action figures and stuff. But there's a director, his name's Zack Snyder. He did Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman. And I really love those movies, and they're very divisive. A lot of people hate them. A lot of people just love them. I'm on the camp that I really love them because the risks he took and the perspective. And I went to a viewing where he was there, and he did a Q&A. And they were asking him about his take on Superman because it was a little different than what you had seen before. It wasn't Christopher Reeves. He wasn't a Boy Scout. He was conflicted. And I really love that. And he said something so simple, and it's like a no-duh thing, but it was profound. He said, I made a movie that I wanted to see. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess. It wasn't, I didn't want to make a movie for the studio or make a movie even for the fans. If it's my project and it's my take, this is my take. So I want to make a movie that I would sit and watch. So that's why I had Superman be conflicted. That's why I had Superman get in fights and do all these different things, because I hadn't seen it before and I wanted to. I want to see him punch Batman. when he said that, I was sitting there and it kind of clicked as a creative. I had forgotten, which is easy to do, that your art is yours. Because we get, especially now with social media and all these things, we get caught up in doing things for other people, for reaction, for this or that, for money, all these things, when at the base of it, you're given these things to create from your perspective, not to try to copy someone else's perspective. And I realized that, man, I've done music for a long time. I've been in these bands and I've written with people, but it's been so long since I've just done something for myself, by myself, you know? And so I set up a little home studio, and I just decided to sit down, and I was going to write and record whatever came out. No filter, no producer, no one, just me. And for better or for worse, what you get is Nate Parrish, which is, it's not the coolest name in the world. I mean, it's my name, but not like a cool band name. but I wanted to use that because that's what it is. You know, it's
right.
You're going to hear Nate Parrish. This is what I think. This is what I believe, whatever. So I just sat down and started recording whatever came out. The first song I did was Politicians and Celebrities. So I just decided I was going to write and release a song for a month and then just see how that goes. So I did that for about 6 months, and I had 4 other songs also recorded, and I decided to put together an album. And I was pretty sure no one would hear it or care, but it wasn't necessarily the point. It was just like, I want to create.
Right.
But yeah, but some people liked it, and that was cool. And yeah, it's got elements of all the different, I guess, iterations of punk rock, because that's just kind of what I like. So it's got a little bit of the 70s stuff and the 90s stuff and some of the 2000s. So the bands I grew up with, you know, when it was time to write a solo album, that's just kind of naturally what happened. My first album in 2020, and I released my second one in this past April.
So your first album was I'm a Wreck.
Yeah.
Your new one is Soul Surgery. So I'm looking for the third one to tell me whether or not you survive.
I know. I'm thinking, do I need to keep with the theme here?
I'm in for it.
Yeah. I'm writing it now. I'm demoing out songs. Yeah. So we'll see. I think I have a concept. I think it's going to be a little bit of a left turn, but I think I have a concept.
Nice. I was listening to it in my car because I like to listen to it in context from beginning to end.
I actually appreciate that, especially on this album, because the way it's mastered is all the songs run together.
Yeah.
Which was intentional.
I was looking at some of the lyrics, and I like this one. Humanity in entropy is bleeding me of empathy. God needs because I need soul surgery. Yeah. Yeah, that's Purpose and Pain, right? Yeah. So if you listen to the album, there's little Easter eggs. So like that song references the album, Soul Surgery. But there's a lot of songs will reference other songs and past songs. I put little things in there. But yeah, that was 2021, I think, when I wrote that. And just the honesty of like watching sort of people constantly destroy themselves. It starts to wear on you, where you can wake up one day and be like, I don't like it here. I don't. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, like it says, it's bleeding me of empathy. Like I want to be empathetic, but it's hard, you know, when we keep destroying ourselves. Like it says, you know, I didn't choose these choices, but bitterness is poisonous. So it is what it is. These are the choices we're given. Are we going to continue on the narrow road, or are we going to step off of it? I mean, this is where we're at. So you still have a choice to make.
You have Kutless, you have Nate Parrish project, but then you had to go and start doing graphic design.
Had to, yep.
Had to, absolutely. Very reminiscent of comics and things like that. Got that comic book look.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I've been drawing since I was like 3 years old. I've always loved drawing. I used to get dropped off at school. Both my parents work, so I get dropped off at school when the janitor gets there. So I was there like an hour before, and then I got picked up last. So I spent a lot of time by myself. So I would draw, and I love drawing and always done that. I've gotten some opportunities over the years to do some projects for my own band. Like I used to do Worth Dying For's merch back in the day, and then FM Static, I did their album. What was it called? The Diary one?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, Dear Diary.
Yeah, so Trevor saw me drawing. I would just randomly draw merch for like Kid Run and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he saw me drawing. He's like, hey, do you want to do my album? Yeah. So it's another one of those things, you know, God just opened a door. But yeah, so by necessity, I just learned Photoshop and Illustrator because I needed to do digital renders for our merch. I started just doing digital stuff, and I would do our own band stuff, and then other bands would see it, and they said, oh, who did it? And I said, oh, I did it. And then just kind of did it that way. And I started up again around 2020, just started doing more fun stuff just because, it was 2020. We needed more laughs,
Right.
So, and decided to recently here to jump back into like doing logo design and merch for bands. Because, I do my own stuff, which is a part of the Nate Parrish stuff. That's part of the whole thing is just I do all the artwork and all the videos and stuff because that's the DIY punk rock thing in me. But
yeah.
I recently did a design for the Showdown, which was really cool because I love them. They're one of my favorite bands. And so I did like a design for them and doing some other bands and stuff. So it's fun, but it definitely has a specific aesthetic, so.
What's the name of your graphic arts company?
Black Pastel Design Co. So I like black and I tend to use pastels. So there you go.
There you go. Combo. Yeah.
Backstage with Mothership returns after this. Check us out on Facebook at I'm with Mothership.
I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that your favorite decade was the 90s.
I like the 90s. The 90s. I think I grew up in the 80s, but I was little, Yeah. So the 90s is where I got to pick stuff, like pick my music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the 90s were pretty good. Get some good tunes.
That's generally the way it is. It's usually that second decade of your life that kind of shapes you.
It's funny to watch it come back.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, yeah, look at this cool new style. I was like, what are you talking about? That's what I looked like in high school.
Exactly.
I'm waiting for Frosted Tips to come back.
Oh, gosh. Please no. I'm sure they will.
They have to, right? We've done everything. Even the bowl cut came back.
The mullet and have we got Jinkos back yet?
No, Jinko. Hey, my wife tells me that Jinkos are on the horizon, so prepare yourself.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, get ready. I felt like I read somewhere it was nothing new under the sun. I'm not sure where I read that, but wise words.
Sounds almost biblical.
Yeah, maybe.
It's true. We just rehash it and maybe put a little extra glitter on top.
That's right. Well, even, music and stuff, you are a product of your influences. So like you mentioned, my music is reminiscent of this and that. Well, it's ingrained, and if it's honest expression of who you are, then cool.
And while we're talking about these decades, did you ever go back and learn Led Zeppelin? Because, man, that's what I grew up with.
No, I didn't. It's funny. No. I didn't at all. It's not what I would suggest to people, but I did it backwards. I went straight to electric guitar. I learned power chords and all the punk rock stuff, and then I started writing music. Okay. Then I got an acoustic like 3 years later. So even when I tried to take a guitar class in college, I brought my electric. So I was the only guy there with an electric guitar. My teacher was like, are you going to be able to hear yourself? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. And I lasted like 2 classes, and then I dropped it. So I did it sort of backwards. I think I was so bent on just rocking that I thought acoustic, that's lame. But now, I've
not knowing how practical it was.
Well, very practical, and also it helps you with the calluses. And I would suggest, if you're listening out there, young guitar players, probably start on acoustic. But somehow it worked out for me, and so I don't know.
I was going to ask you what you did in your spare time, but looking at all the action figures behind you there, I think I know. Yeah,
I collect action figures quite extensively. I just always been fascinated by the ingenuity and the mechanics of action figures, especially, some of the stuff that I grew up with. Yeah. There's a portion of time before I had a kid, I was making action figures. So I would do local art shows. Yeah, so I would do little sculpts and make resin figures and take them to local art shows and stuff like that. I would really love to actually master that and be able to create that. It's just it's really time consuming to sculpt and make the molds and all that stuff. But
but that's cool.
Yeah, I was able to make a couple different original figures and stuff, and sold a couple, but it's just really time consuming. So I'm just gonna wait on that one. But I like to go to the gym. I like to work out. I like to collect toys and play with my son.
Playing with a 2-year-old, very relaxed.
Yeah, it's very relaxing. I've changed a lot over the past 2 years. Kids will do that to you, as you know. Will. And realizing how not patient I actually am. Mm-hmm. And then Also, that it's okay to just sit down and just watch your kid play in the dirt.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't a thing for me. I mean, obviously, I have all these different projects, so I keep busy. But if I'm not careful, I got this weird pressure that I put on myself of having to create or this or that. And, in reality, it's like my best creation is here, a 2-year-old.
I know you've already heard this, but they grow up so quickly. Enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sit in the dirt and have fun.
Yes, I'm definitely do that. And he showed some interest in guitar, so we're cultivating that.
In case James needs another guitarist.
Yeah. Well, I got to, we keep the Kutless thing going for decades. You got to have some.
Right.
They got kids. James's son is 16.
When there's a Kutless tribute band, your son
That's
will
right.
play.
People ask me, like, how long are you going to do music? Like, I don't know, probably forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your or Kutless's favorite road snacks?
Ooh, road snacks. Okay. So the Kutless boys, we're like pretty chip and dip, like very simple chips and dips. And then we have some like dietary restriction to things. So there's a few things there, but always LaCroix. Was it Milky Way is in there?
Is it on your rider?
I think it is. Yeah, I actually think it is. And Butterfingers, I think they are. The chips and dip is, but we're actually pretty big eaters, the Kutless boys, and so meat is a big deal for us. Just handfuls of meat. Yeah, beef jerky.
Yeah.
For me, when you go on tour and you're doing the bus thing, I really try to be conscious of you want to feel good, right?
Right.
It's real easy to just get pizza all the time, but you want to kind of pay attention to that because it's going to affect you eventually on the road. You got to take care of yourself. So I have a lot of beef jerky and things like that are just protein and not a lot of sugars and things like that. So I'm boring.
Beef jerky's pretty high on most bands' lists, so that's not very boring.
Yeah.
And it's kind of expensive sometimes, so it might be nice if fans brought you some, right?
That would be, if you guys are listening, I would love some beef jerky. And then the other thing is I really like cereal. I like cereal as a dessert. Yeah, a bowl of cereal after dinner is pretty nice. All-time favorite is Fruity Pebbles.
Okay.
The only issue there is I cannot just eat one bowl. I kind of have to eat the whole box. So
multi meal.
Yeah, yes, I need that jumbo size.
Okay. Do we have pescatarians or vegetarians or lactose intolerant or gluten-free?
Gluten-free. Yes.
Okay.
We have gluten-free, and I think Matt is like super into chicken tendies. So that's the big joke is always like if they have pizza or chicken tendies because that's like most of his diet. But yeah, so with John Micah, he's gluten-free. So, but that works out. I actually kind of like that too because a lot of times I just want a slab of meat.
That's right.
That's what I want, So
sounds good.
Okay, that won't be hard to remember. Next time I see Kutless, I'll bring you some chicken tendies and a slab of meat.
That's cool. You do that and different people. It really is. It's easy to get caught up in a sound check and you're tired and this and that and a bus or whatever. But it really does make it worth it. And I remember when I first joined Kutless, I wasn't prepared for the stories I was getting. Like, I'm new. But people are like, oh, you're in Kutless, so duh, I'm going to come talk to you. And they just tell me stories about what faith can do. And this, I'm just like crying in front of these strangers. Wow. And I'm like, don't tell me this right before I have to go on stage. But
that should probably evoke quite the performance from you.
Yeah, absolutely. You remember those things and you're like, this is why we do it. So, Oh, you know what's cool too? So after the show, I went up and I was talking to some fans and stuff. And this guy runs up. He's like, hey, he's like, I love your album Soul Surgery. Like, oh, you heard that? And he's like, oh, yeah. I was like, dude, you're my first international fan. He's like, yeah. And he heard it on a website. There was some review on a website. And so he checked out the album. So that was really cool. So even with the Kutless thing, and then I get some Nate Parrish stories here and there, too, which is really humbling.
That is really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So
write it down.
Yeah, write it down. We used to print them out back in the MySpace days. We would get MySpace messages, and we would print them and put them in our band room.
Yeah.
You know,
talk about humbling. Even I had a few fans over in Germany. I was like, "How do you know me?"
People know who you are. They do.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. I knew who you were, and you're like, "You know me?" Like, yeah, dude. Mothership, the bands. You know, the camaraderie with the bands. You're included in that. So. You know,
I'm an honorary band member.
Yes, I have dubbed you the 5th member of Kutless. Okay.
Yes.
The 6th member.
Okay.
Wait, the 6th? You're the 6th member.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
So if you could play drums, that'd be great. I haven't discussed this with the guys. Yeah, I see that. Okay. I'm sure they're fine with it. That you're the 6th member. So.
Well, I'm officially in Kutless now, and on that note, I'm gonna let you go. Have a good night, and thanks.
Absolutely. We'll see you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more great music and check out my blog page on the Solid Rock Radio website for my guests' social media links. If you've missed any of my past interviews, you can find them uploaded to podcast.solidrockradio.org. Have a wonderful week and let's be kind to one another.